I was staring out my kitchen window on that freezing January morning in Grand Forks, North Dakota, when I saw something that made my blood boil hotter than the coffee in my hand. 3 men in reflective vests were standing at the edge of my property line with chainsaws, and they were cutting down my snow fence. Not just trimming it, actually cutting the entire thing down, section by section, the orange polymer mesh falling into the snow like a wounded animal. My name is Lucas Barrett, and I have lived in this house on the rural outskirts of Grand Forks for 8 years. When I moved here, the state highway was already a problem during winter. The wind would whip snow across the open fields and create massive drifts that would make the road nearly impassable. After 3 winters of watching accidents happen right in front of my house, including one where a family's SUV rolled into the ditch and the kids were crying while we waited for the ambulance, I contacted the North Dakota Department of Transportation. They sent out an engineer named Mike Sorensen who walked my property, took measurements, and told me that installing a snow fence along my property line would significantly reduce the drifting problem on the highway. Mike had been great about the whole thing. He explained that snow fences work by disrupting wind flow and causing snow to deposit in controlled areas rather than across roadways. The state actually had a program that encouraged property owners to install them near problematic highway sections. They even provided specifications for proper placement, height, and materials. I spent nearly $4,000 on that fence, installing it exactly where Mike had marked with stakes and following every guideline in the document he gave me. The fence had worked beautifully. That first winter after installation, the highway stayed clear even during the worst blizzards. The state highway crew thanked me personally. I got a letter from the district engineer commending my civic responsibility. And now 3 men were destroying it. I did not even grab my coat. I ran out the door in my flannel shirt and jeans, my boots not even fully laced, sprinting across the frozen ground toward them. "Hey, what the hell do you think you are doing?" I shouted. The 3 men turned to look at me. One of them, a younger guy with a sparse beard, actually looked relieved that I had shown up. The other 2 looked annoyed. The oldest one, a heavy-set man with a red face that might have been from cold or anger, shut off his chainsaw. "We are removing an unauthorized structure," he said flatly. "Unauthorized? The state highway department told me to put that fence up. I have documents." The red-faced man pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. "We have our orders from the Meadowbrook Estates Homeowners Association. This fence violates community aesthetic standards and was installed without HOA approval." I felt my jaw drop. Meadowbrook Estates, HOA? I am not even in Meadowbrook Estates. That was the truth. Meadowbrook Estates was a planned community development that had been built about 5 years ago, starting about a quarter-mile down the road from my property. My house predated that development by decades. The original farmhouse had been built in 1987, and I had purchased it in 2018. I was surrounded by agricultural land on 3 sides, with the highway on the 4th side. Meadowbrook Estates was a separate entity entirely. The red-faced man looked uncertain for the first time. "The work order says this property." "Show me," I demanded. He handed me the paper reluctantly. It was printed on official-looking letterhead that read, "Meadowbrook Estates, HOA," with an address in Grand Forks. The work order described my address and specified removal of unapproved fencing structure inconsistent with community standards. At the bottom was a signature I could barely read, but the printed name below it said Brenda Hutchison, HOA President. "This is insane," I said. "I do not belong to your HOA, I never have. My property is not part of Meadowbrook Estates. The younger guy with the sparse beard spoke up. I told them this seemed weird, Dave. He was looking at the red-faced man. This house is old. It does not match the development at all. Dave looked uncomfortable now. We just do what we are told, Jeremy. The HOA pays us to do maintenance and enforcement work. Well, stop cutting down my fence right now, I said, my voice shaking with anger. This is destruction of property. I will call the police if you touch one more inch of it. Dave considered this for a moment, then nodded to the other two. Pack it up. Let us go back to the office and sort this out. I watched them load their chainsaws into their truck and drive away, leaving about 30 feet of my fence cut down and lying in the snow. The damage was done, but at least they had stopped. I pulled out my phone and took pictures of everything: the cut fence, the tire tracks, the scattered pieces of orange mesh. Back inside, I was shaking from adrenaline and cold. I made another pot of coffee and sat down at my kitchen table with my laptop. I needed to find out what was going on. I pulled up the county property records website and entered my address. The parcel information came up clearly. Lucas Barrett, owner since 2018, lot size 2.3 acres, no HOA covenants listed. I printed that out. Then I searched for Meadowbrook Estates. Their development had its own parcel map showing 43 individual lots, all with HOA covenants attached. My property was clearly marked on the county map as separate from their development. There was agricultural land between us, owned by a farmer named Tom Olson who rented it out for soybean crops. I called the North Dakota Department of Transportation and asked for Mike Sorensen. It took a while to get transferred to the right department, but eventually I heard his familiar voice. Mike, this is Lucas Barrett out on Highway 81. We worked together on that snow fence installation about 5 years back. Lucas, sure, I remember. How is that fence working out for you? Well, that is why I am calling. Someone just tried to cut it down. Actually, they did cut down about 30 feet of it before I stopped them. They claimed it was unauthorized. There was a long silence. That is impossible. We have all the documentation. That fence was installed with departmental approval following our exact specifications. Who tried to remove it? I explained the entire situation, the work crew, the HOA letter, everything. Mike listened without interrupting. Lucas, that fence is not just approved, it is essentially mandated at this point. When we did the accident analysis for that section of Highway 81, we determined that snow fence installation was necessary for public safety. Your cooperation in installing it on your property saved the state from having to negotiate an easement or install state-owned fencing. That fence needs to stay up. It is documented in our highway safety plan. So what do? I asked. First, do not let anyone touch that fence. Second, I am going to send you an email right now with all the official documentation, the safety report, the installation approval, the thank you letter from the district, everything. Third, I am going to call the state attorney's office because interfering with a highway safety measure is actually a serious issue. And fourth, you might want to call your local police non-emergency line and file a report about the property damage. I thanked Mike and hung up. Within 5 minutes, my email dinged with a message from him containing half a dozen PDF attachments. I skimmed through them. Everything was there: the engineering assessment that identified my property as the optimal location for snow fence installation, the approval letter, even photos from when Mike had come out to inspect the completed installation. I called the Grand Forks County Sheriff's Department non-emergency line. The dispatcher who answered sounded bored until I explained that someone had cut down part of my fence. She asked if I knew who had done it, and I explained about the work crew and the HOA letter. An HOA ordered work on your property without your permission, she asked, suddenly more interested. Yes, and I am not even part of their HOA. Okay, I am sending a deputy out to take a report. This might be criminal mischief or destruction of property. While I waited for the deputy, I decided to call the Meadowbrook Estates HOA directly. The number was on the letterhead. A woman answered on the second ring. Meadowbrook Estates HOA, this is Brenda speaking. Of course it was Brenda. The name on the work order. I kept my voice calm. Hello, Brenda. My name is Lucas Barrett. I live at 4782 Highway 81. Some men came to my property this morning with a work order signed by you to remove my snow fence. Yes, that non-conforming structure, Brenda said immediately. Her voice had that particular quality I had learned to recognize over the years, the sound of someone who believes they are absolutely right and everyone else is absolutely wrong. Multiple residents have complained about the unsightly appearance. It is not consistent with our community standards. Brenda, I am not part of your community. My property is not in Meadowbrook Estates. I do not belong to your HOA. Your property is within the Meadowbrook Estates governance zone, she said primly. When our development was approved, the Planning Commission extended our architectural control authority to all properties within a quarter-mile radius to ensure community standards. I actually laughed. I could not help it. That is not how property law works. You cannot just declare authority over other people's land. I suggest you review the county planning documents, Brenda said coldly. And I am informing you that the fence removal will be completed. If you interfere, we will pursue legal action for violating HOA regulations. The fence was installed at the direction of the North Dakota Department of Transportation for Highway Safety, I said. It is staying up, and if anyone touches it again, they will be arrested. We will see about that, Brenda snapped and hung up. I sat there staring at my phone. This woman actually believed she had authority over my property. It was delusional. 20 minutes later, a sheriff's deputy arrived. His name was Deputy Martinez, and he looked like he was in his early 30s, with a no-nonsense demeanor. I showed him the damaged fence, explained the situation, and provided him with copies of the work order and the State Highway Department documents. Martinez took notes carefully. So you have written proof that the state mandated this fence? Not quite mandated, but strongly encouraged and approved for highway safety reasons. I have emails from the district engineer saying it is part of their safety plan for this road section. He nodded. And you never agreed to be part of this HOA? Never. I bought this house years before Meadowbrook Estates even existed. There are no HOA covenants on my property deed. Martinez walked the property line, taking his own photos. Here is what I can tell you right now. This is definitely criminal mischief at minimum, possibly destruction of property depending on the value. The problem is going to be intent. If those workers genuinely believed they had legal authority to do this work, it gets complicated. What about the HOA president who ordered it? That is more interesting, Martinez said. If she knowingly ordered work on property she had no authority over, that could be several different charges, but we would need to prove she knew. If she genuinely believes the HOA has authority over your property, even if she is completely wrong, it is more of a civil matter. So what do I do? File this report, which I am doing. Keep all your documentation. Do not let anyone else touch that fence. If they come back, call 911 immediately. And honestly, you probably need to talk to a lawyer about getting a restraining order or something similar to prevent the HOA from taking any further action. After Martinez left, I spent an hour researching attorneys in Grand Forks. I found a law firm that specialized in property disputes and called them. The receptionist told me that attorney Patricia Voss could see me the next day at 10 in the morning. I took the appointment. That evening, I drove over to Tom Olson's farm. Tom was in his late 60s, a lifelong farmer who had been working the land around here since before I was born. He was in his barn working on a tractor when I arrived. "Lucas, what brings you out here in the cold?" I explained the situation with the fence and the HOA. Tom's weathered face darkened as he listened. "That Meadowbrook bunch has been a pain since day one," he said. "You know, they tried to tell me I could not spread manure on my fields because the smell was inconsistent with residential expectations. I told them this was a farm 100 years before their development existed, and they could live with it or move. Did they try to enforce anything against you? They sent me letters. I threw them away. My lawyer sent them one letter back explaining agricultural exemptions and right to farm laws, and they backed off, but they are always looking for ways to expand their control." Tom wiped his hands on a rag. "Your fence situation is worse, though. That is actual property damage." "I am seeing a lawyer tomorrow." "Good. Do not let them push you around. People like that HOA president, they thrive on people being too intimidated to fight back." I drove home as the sun was setting, the temperature already dropping to near zero. The damaged section of fence flapped in the wind, and I could see snow beginning to drift across the highway where the fence no longer provided protection. That drift would be significant by morning if the wind kept up. The next day, I sat in Patricia Voss's office at 10 in the morning sharp. She was a woman in her mid-40s with sharp eyes and an air of competence. I laid out the entire situation and provided her with all my documentation: the property deed, the state highway department approvals, the HOA work order, the police report, and photos of the damage. Patricia reviewed everything carefully, making notes. When she finished, she looked up at me. "This is actually fascinating," she said, "and infuriating. You have a clear-cut case. The HOA has absolutely no authority over your property. The idea that a planning commission could extend HOA authority over non-member properties is completely false. That is not a thing. That is what Brenda claimed on the phone. Brenda Hutchison is either deliberately lying or dangerously misinformed. Either way, she has caused you actual damages." Patricia pulled up something on her computer. "I am looking at the Meadowbrook Estates HOA covenant documents that are filed with the county. Their jurisdiction is explicitly limited to the platted lots within their development. There is no mention of any extended governance zone. So what are my options? Several. First, I will send a cease and desist letter to the HOA immediately, with copies to their registered agent and to the work crew they hired. This will put everyone on notice that further action will result in immediate legal consequences. Second, we file a lawsuit for the property damage you have already suffered. The cost to repair that fence section is your direct damages, plus we can pursue additional damages for the fact that this was done maliciously and without authority. Third, we can seek a temporary restraining order preventing the HOA from taking any action regarding your property while the lawsuit proceeds." "How much is this going to cost me?" Patricia quoted me her rates. They were not cheap, but they were reasonable for a property attorney. "However," she added, "given the strength of your case, I am very confident we will recover your attorney fees as part of the judgment. When someone acts this far outside their authority and causes damages, courts tend to make them pay for everything." I agreed to retain her, signing the paperwork right there. Patricia told me she would have the cease and desist letter drafted and sent by the end of the day. I went home feeling a bit better. At least I had a professional on my side now. I spent the afternoon repairing the damaged section of fence myself. The poles were still intact, the work crew had only cut through the mesh. I had some spare snow fence material in my garage from the original installation, and I was able to restring most of the damaged section. It was not perfect, but it would function until I could get it professionally repaired. 3 days later, I got a call from Patricia. "Lucas, we have a problem." "Well, you have a problem. The HOA just filed a lawsuit against you." My stomach dropped. "What?" "They are suing you for violating community standards and seeking an injunction to force removal of your snow fence. They are also seeking fines of $500 per day that the fence has been in violation, which according to their calculations is about 5 years, so roughly $900,000. I actually felt dizzy. This is insane. "It is absolutely insane, and it is not going to succeed," Patricia said firmly. "But it does mean we are now in active litigation. The good news is that this actually helps us. They have put their ridiculous claim in writing and filed it with the court. When we defeat this, and we will defeat it, the judgment against them is going to be substantial. What do I need to do? Come in tomorrow and we will draft our response. We will file a motion to dismiss their lawsuit and simultaneously file our counterclaim for the damages they caused. I am also going to contact the state attorney's office. Your friend at the highway department already called them, and they are interested in this case. Interfering with highway safety measures is something they take seriously." The next week was a blur of legal paperwork and phone calls. Patricia filed our response to the HOA's lawsuit, along with a motion to dismiss and a counterclaim. The counterclaim was extensive. We were suing for the cost of repairing the fence, for attorney's fees, for punitive damages based on the HOA's knowing interference with state-mandated safety measures, and for harassment. The state attorney's office sent an investigator to interview me. His name was Robert Chen, and he was very interested in the highway safety aspect of the case. "The way state law works," Chen explained, "is that once the Department of Transportation identifies a safety measure and approves its installation, interfering with it can be prosecuted as reckless endangerment. Snow fences on Highway 81 are particularly important because that stretch has a history of winter accidents. So the HOA could face criminal charges, potentially. We are still investigating. We need to establish what Brenda Hutchison knew and when she knew it. If she was informed that the fence was state-approved for safety and she ordered its removal anyway, that is a crime. If she genuinely did not know, it is murkier." 2 weeks after the lawsuit was filed, we had our first court hearing. It was a preliminary hearing on the HOA's request for an emergency injunction to remove my fence. Patricia and I sat on one side of the courtroom. On the other side sat Brenda Hutchison and her attorney, a nervous-looking young man named Kevin Marsh. Judge David Kowalski presided. He was an older man with gray hair and a reputation for not tolerating nonsense. He reviewed the filings in silence for several minutes before looking up. "Mr. Marsh, I have read your client's complaint. Can you explain to me the legal basis for the HOA's authority over Mr. Barrett's property?" Kevin Marsh stood up, shuffling papers. "Your Honor, when the Meadowbrook Estates development was approved by the County Planning Commission, the approval included provisions for maintaining community standards within the surrounding area to protect property values." "Show me where that is in writing," Judge Kowalski said. Marsh fumbled with more papers. "It is, referenced in the Planning Commission minutes from the approval hearing." "I have those minutes right here," Judge Kowalski said, holding up a document. "I see no such provision. I see approval for a planned residential development on specific parcels. I see HOA covenants that apply to those parcels. I see nothing that extends any authority beyond the boundaries of the development itself." Marsh looked at Brenda, who leaned forward and whispered something urgent to him. He turned back to the judge. "Your Honor, it was the understanding of the HOA board when they took office that their authority extended to properties within visual range of the development to maintain aesthetics." "Understanding based on what?" Judge Kowalski's voice had an edge now. "Did the HOA consult with an attorney before taking this action?" "The previous board did have legal counsel," Marsh said weakly. "Did the current board consult with legal counsel before ordering removal of Mr. Barrett's fence?" Silence. Marsh looked at Brenda again. She shook her head slightly. "We will interpret that as a no," Judge Kowalski said. He turned to Patricia. "Miss Voss, I assume you have something to add." Patricia stood smoothly. "Your Honor, the defense is straightforward. Mr. Barrett's property is not part of Meadowbrook Estates. There are no HOA covenants attached to his deed. The HOA has exactly zero authority over his property. Furthermore, the fence in question was installed with explicit approval from the North Dakota Department of Transportation as a highway safety measure. I have submitted documentation of this approval with our filings. I have reviewed those documents," Judge Kowalski said. "The State Highway Department approval seems very clear." He looked at Marsh. "Did your client know about the state approval before ordering the fence removal?" I do not believe so, Your Honor." "That does not answer my question. Did she know or not?" Brenda leaned forward and whispered to Marsh again. He straightened. "My client states that she was not aware of any state approval." "Then why did she assume she had authority to remove a structure on someone else's property?" Judge Kowalski asked. No good answer came from the plaintiff's table. Judge Kowalski made some notes. "Here is my ruling. The plaintiff's request for an emergency injunction is denied. There is no legal basis for the HOA to demand removal of Mr. Barrett's fence. The fence will remain in place. Furthermore, I am ordering the HOA to take no further action regarding Mr. Barrett's property pending resolution of this case. Any violation of this order will result in contempt charges." He looked at both attorneys. "We will schedule a full hearing on the merits for 6 weeks from now. Mr. Marsh, I strongly suggest your client consult with experienced counsel and consider the wisdom of continuing this lawsuit." We left the courtroom victorious, at least for the moment. In the hallway outside, I saw Brenda Hutchison standing with Kevin Marsh. She was in her late 40s, with blonde hair styled precisely and wearing an expensive-looking pantsuit. When she saw me, her face twisted with anger. "This is not over," she said loudly. "You are destroying the character of our community with that hideous fence." "It is not your community," I said calmly. "It is my property. We will see what the court says about that." "The court just told you that you have no authority over my property," Patricia interjected smoothly. "I suggest you accept that reality before you dig yourself into a deeper hole." Brenda turned and stalked away with Kevin Marsh hurrying after her. Over the next few weeks, things escalated in ways I had not anticipated. First, I started receiving daily letters from the HOA. Each one cited a different violation. My grass was too long. It was January and covered in snow. My mailbox was non-conforming. It had been there since 1987. My driveway needed resealing. It was gravel, like most rural driveways. Each letter threatened fines and legal action. Patricia sent another cease and desist letter, this one more strongly worded. The letters stopped for a few days, then resumed. Then someone vandalized my fence again. I woke up one morning to find spray paint all over the snow fence, bright pink paint spelling out, "Remove this eyesore." I called the sheriff's department immediately. Deputy Martinez came back out looking frustrated. "This is escalating," he said. "Do you have security cameras?" "Not yet." "Get some. Today if possible. Because if this keeps happening and we can get video evidence of who is doing it, we can make arrests." I drove into Grand Forks that afternoon and bought a set of wireless security cameras with night vision. I installed them covering all angles of my property, focusing especially on the fence line. The setup took me hours, but by evening I had full coverage. Good thing I did. 3 nights later, at 2 in the morning, my phone buzzed with a motion alert from the cameras. I grabbed my phone and pulled up the camera app. On the screen, I could see a dark-colored SUV parked on the side of the highway. 2 people were walking toward my fence carrying something. I immediately called 911. "This is Lucas Barrett at 4782 Highway 81. I have intruders on my property right now, approaching my snow fence. I have them on security camera. I need officers here immediately." The dispatcher assured me deputies were on the way and told me to stay inside and keep watching the cameras. I pulled up the camera feed on my laptop to get a bigger view. The 2 figures reached the fence. One of them had a chainsaw. They were going to cut it down again, but before they could start the chainsaw, I heard sirens. The 2 figures heard them too. They dropped the chainsaw and ran back to the SUV. The vehicle peeled out, but not before my camera got a clear shot of the license plate. 2 sheriff's vehicles arrived within minutes. I met the deputies outside and showed them the video footage on my phone. "That is a clear license plate number," one of the deputies said. "We will run this right now." They called it in. I could hear radio chatter. After a few minutes, the deputy looked at me with a strange expression. "The vehicle is registered to Brenda Hutchison." My jaw dropped. "The HOA president herself, apparently. We are going to pay her a visit right now. Can you send us that video footage?" I emailed the video files to the address they provided. The deputies left, and I stood in my dark yard feeling a strange mix of vindication and disbelief. Brenda had actually come to my property in the middle of the night to destroy my fence again. She had not even hired someone else to do it this time. I did not sleep the rest of that night. At 8 in the morning, Patricia called me. "Lucas, I just got a very interesting call from the county prosecutor's office. Brenda Hutchison was arrested at 4 this morning and charged with attempted criminal mischief and trespassing. She made bail a few hours ago, but she is facing criminal charges now." "Good," I said. I felt no sympathy. This woman had harassed me for weeks, damaged my property, filed a frivolous lawsuit, and then tried to destroy my fence again in the middle of the night. "This changes our civil case significantly," Patricia continued. "Her criminal conduct is now on record. That supports our claim for punitive damages. I am going to file an amended counterclaim asking for significantly more." The story hit the local news that afternoon. "HOA president arrested for property vandalism" was the headline on the Grand Forks Herald website. The article detailed the whole saga: the initial fence cutting, the lawsuit, the arrest. They interviewed me by phone, and I explained about the state highway department approval and how the fence was necessary for public safety. The article also interviewed some Meadowbrook Estates residents. The reactions were mixed. Some supported Brenda, saying the fence was ugly and brought down property values. But others were horrified. One resident, a woman named Janice Kowalski, was quoted saying, "I had no idea our HOA president was doing things like this. We elected her to maintain our neighborhood, not harass people outside of it. This is embarrassing." After the news article, things began to shift. I started getting calls from Meadowbrook Estates residents apologizing for Brenda's behavior. Several of them told me there was going to be an emergency HOA board meeting to discuss removing her as president. That meeting happened 3 days later. I was not invited, obviously, but Tom Olson attended. He was not part of the HOA either, but he knew several of the residents and they let him sit in as an observer. He called me that evening to tell me what happened. It was brutal, Tom said. About half the homeowners showed up, which is way more than usual for HOA meetings. Brenda tried to defend herself, saying she was protecting property values and that you were the problem for refusing to comply with community standards. But then, someone projected your property deed on a screen and showed that you are not part of the HOA. And someone else showed the state highway department approval for the fence. Brenda tried to argue that the visual impact still mattered, and people just tore into her. They voted her out as president unanimously, except for her own vote. Then they voted to immediately drop the lawsuit against you and to offer to pay for the fence damage. I felt a weight lift. They are dropping the lawsuit. Yep. The new board president is a guy named Richard Foster. Seems reasonable. He said the HOA is going to issue a formal apology to you and wants to settle everything quietly. Richard Foster called me the next day. He sounded mortified. Mr. Barrett, I want to apologize on behalf of the Meadowbrook Estates HOA for everything that has happened. What Brenda did was completely inappropriate and illegal. The board has voted to withdraw our lawsuit against you and to compensate you for all damages. We are also going to pay for your legal fees. I appreciate that, I said, but there is still the matter of the criminal charges against Brenda. That is out of our hands, Richard said. And honestly, most of us think she deserves whatever she gets. She lied to the board about having authority over your property. She used HOA funds to hire that work crew without proper authorization. We are probably going to have to sue her ourselves to recover those costs. I talked to Patricia about the settlement offer. She negotiated with the HOA's new attorney and we reached an agreement quickly. The HOA would pay $25,000 to cover my fence repairs, attorney fees, and general damages. In exchange, I would release them from further civil liability, though that release did not extend to Brenda personally. We can still pursue Brenda individually if we want, Patricia explained. But honestly, she is going to face criminal penalties. That might be enough. The criminal case moved forward. The county prosecutor charged Brenda not just with the attempted vandalism from the night of her arrest, but also with the original fence cutting. The work crew had given statements identifying her as the person who ordered the work and provided the work order. The workers were not charged because they had genuinely believed they were doing legitimate work for the HOA, but there was something else. The state attorney's office added a charge: reckless endangerment. Robert Chen, the state investigator, had determined that after the first fence-cutting incident, Mike Sorensen from the highway department had personally called Brenda and explained that the fence was state-approved for highway safety. He had sent her an email with all the documentation. Despite this, Brenda had attempted to destroy the fence again. That demonstrated knowing interference with a safety measure, which under North Dakota law was a criminal offense. The preliminary hearing for the criminal case was in late March. I was called as a witness. The courtroom was different this time. This was criminal court, not civil court. The judge was a stern woman named Judge Patricia Anderson. The prosecutor laid out the case methodically. He presented the timeline of events, the work order Brenda had signed, the video footage from my security cameras, and the email chain between Mike Sorensen and Brenda, where he explicitly informed her that the fence was state-mandated for highway safety. When they showed that email on a screen in the courtroom, Brenda's attorney, a different lawyer now than Kevin Marsh, looked defeated. The email was crystal clear. Mike had written, "Miss Hutchison, I am writing to inform you that the snow fence on the Barrett property was installed at the direction of the North Dakota Department of Transportation as a highway safety measure. This fence has been documented to prevent snow drifts that have caused multiple accidents on Highway 81. Any interference with this fence could result in legal consequences. Please contact me if you have any questions." Brenda had replied, "Your opinion is noted. The HOA has its own standards and priorities." That email, more than anything else, sealed her fate. She had been explicitly warned and had proceeded anyway. When I was called to testify, I simply told the truth about everything that had happened. Brenda's attorney tried to cross-examine me, suggesting that maybe the fence was not really necessary or that I had installed it just to spite the HOA. But that argument fell apart when the prosecutor brought Mike Sorensen to testify. Mike brought accident reports, weather data, and before and after analysis showing that accidents on that stretch of Highway 81 had decreased by 70% since my snow fence was installed. "That fence has likely saved lives," Mike testified. "Removing it would put drivers at risk." Judge Anderson did not take long to make her ruling at the preliminary hearing. She found probable cause for all charges and bound Brenda over for trial, but there would be no trial. 2 weeks later, Brenda's attorney worked out a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to criminal mischief and reckless endangerment. In exchange for her plea, the prosecutor dropped the trespassing charge. The sentencing hearing was in late April. I attended, sitting in the back of the courtroom. Brenda looked different now, smaller somehow, less confident. Her expensive clothes were gone, replaced by a plain gray dress. Judge Anderson was not gentle. "Miss Hutchison, you engaged in a campaign of harassment against Mr. Barrett based on nothing more than your personal aesthetic preferences. When you were informed that the fence you wanted removed was a state-approved safety measure, you ignored that information and attempted to destroy it anyway. You put your own desires above public safety and above the law. That kind of conduct cannot be tolerated." She sentenced Brenda to 90 days in jail, suspended to 30 days with work release, plus 3 years of probation. She also ordered Brenda to pay restitution of $15,000 to cover the costs of the investigation and the state's expenses. And she ordered Brenda to personally apologize to me in writing. That written apology arrived 3 weeks later. It was brief and clearly written by her attorney, but it was there. "I apologize for my actions regarding your property and the snow fence. I was wrong to interfere with your property, and I recognize the fence serves an important safety purpose." I read it once and filed it away. I did not need the apology, really. What I needed was for this nightmare to be over. By summer, things had finally calmed down. My fence was fully repaired and functioning perfectly. The HOA settlement money had covered everything, plus Patricia's fees, and I still had about $8,000 left over. I used some of it to upgrade my security cameras to a more sophisticated system. The Meadowbrook Estates, HOA, under Richard Foster's leadership, actually turned out to be reasonable. They sent out a newsletter to all residents explaining what had happened and making it clear that the HOA's authority extended only to properties within the development. Richard called me personally to tell me that they had revised their bylaws to prevent any future board from trying to claim authority over non-member properties. "We learned a hard lesson," Richard said. "Brenda convinced a lot of us that she knew what she was doing, that she had legal authority for the things she did. We should have asked more questions. We should have demanded she consult with an attorney before taking action. This whole thing was expensive and embarrassing for everyone. Tom Olson came by one evening in June with a case of beer. We sat on my porch watching the sunset over the fields. "Hell of a winter you had," Tom said. "That is one way to put it. You know what, though? You did the right thing. You stood your ground. A lot of people would have just taken the fence down to avoid the hassle, but that fence is important, and you had the law on your side." "It should not have been this hard," I said. "It was a fence that the state wanted there. It should have been simple." "Nothing is simple when someone decides they have power they do not actually have," Tom said. "That is the story of every HOA nightmare. Someone gets a little authority and thinks it extends further than it does." We drank our beers and watched the sky turn orange and purple. The fields were green now with growing crops. The highway was clear and safe, with no snow to drift across it. My fence stood at the property line, doing its job, legally approved and properly installed. In August, I got a letter from the North Dakota Department of Transportation. It was signed by the district director, a woman named Sarah Holmstrom. The letter thanked me for my cooperation with the department's highway safety initiatives and informed me that my case had prompted the department to create a new program. They were going to proactively identify other highway sections where snow fences would improve safety and work with property owners to install them. They would provide clearer documentation and legal protections for property owners who participated. "Your situation highlighted some gaps in our procedures," the letter said. "We are taking steps to ensure no other property owner faces similar harassment for helping improve highway safety." I called Mike Sorensen to thank him. "You did not have to go to all this trouble," I said. "Actually, we did," Mike replied. "That snow fence program was something we had been wanting to expand for years, but we did not have the administrative framework to protect participants. Your case gave us the push we needed to build that framework properly. We have already identified 6 other properties in the district where snow fences would help, and we are reaching out to those owners with much better documentation and support than we gave you." That made me feel good. Maybe something positive had come out of this mess after all. In September, I saw Brenda Hutchison one more time. I was at the grocery store in Grand Forks, pushing a cart down the produce aisle when I nearly ran into her. She was thinner than before, her hair not as carefully styled. She saw me and froze. For a moment neither of us said anything. Then she spoke quietly. "I really am sorry, the apology letter was from my lawyer, but I mean it, I was wrong." I looked at her. She seemed genuine, exhausted and beaten down, but genuine. "Okay," I said. "I convinced myself that I was protecting the neighborhood," she continued. "That property values mattered more than anything else. That enforcing standards was my job, even beyond where I actually had authority. I did not see how wrong I was until everything fell apart. The fence was for safety," I said. "People could have died without it. I know that now. I should have known it then. I just could not see past my own ideas of what things should look like." She shifted her grocery basket from one hand to the other. "I am moving, actually, leaving Grand Forks. Too many people know what happened. I am going to stay with my sister in Fargo and try to start over." I did not know what to say to that, so I just nodded. She walked away, disappearing around the end of the aisle. I finished my shopping and drove home. The late afternoon sun was slanting across my property, illuminating the fence that had caused so much trouble. It looked good, standing there protecting the highway. In a few months, winter would come again and the fence would do its job, keeping the snow off the road, preventing accidents, maybe saving lives. I thought about Brenda, starting over in Fargo. I thought about the Meadowbrook Estates residents who had been caught up in her crusade. I thought about the workers who had cut down my fence believing they were doing legitimate work. Nobody in this situation had started out wanting to cause harm, except maybe Brenda in the end, and even she thought she was doing the right thing. But intentions did not matter as much as facts. The fact was that I owned my property. The fact was that the HOA had no authority over it. The fact was that the fence was legally installed for public safety. Those facts had prevailed, but it had taken months of stress, thousands of dollars, police involvement, and criminal charges. I sat on my porch that evening watching the last light fade from the sky. My phone rang. It was Patricia Voss. "Just wanted to let you know the final settlement check cleared," she said. "Everything is wrapped up on the civil side. The HOA paid in full. Thanks for everything, Patricia. I could not have done this without you. You had a solid case from the beginning," she said. "That made my job easier, but you also stood your ground when a lot of people would have given up. That matters." After we hung up, I sat in the gathering darkness. Fireflies were starting to appear over the fields, little points of light in the gloom. In the distance, I could hear the occasional car passing on Highway 81, safe from snow drifts that would not form, at least not on this stretch of road. The whole experience had taught me something about property rights, about HOAs, about people who think rules apply differently to them. But mostly, it had taught me about persistence. About knowing when you are right and holding that ground even when someone with apparent authority tells you otherwise. My phone buzzed with a text from Tom Olson. "BBQ at my place Sunday. You should come." I texted back that I would be there. Life was returning to normal finally. The fence stood at my property line. The highway was safe. The HOA had new leadership and a clearer understanding of their actual authority. Brenda was facing the consequences of her actions. Justice had been served, not perfectly maybe, but adequately. I went inside and made dinner, feeling something I had not felt in months: peace. The battle was over. I had won, not because I was particularly clever or because I had done anything special, but because I had been in the right and had refused to pretend otherwise. Sometimes that is all it takes. Standing your ground when you know the facts are on your side. Having good documentation. Getting professional help when you need it. And refusing to be bullied by people who have convinced themselves they have authority they do not actually possess. The snow fence remained at my property line, approved by the state, protected by law, serving its purpose. Exactly as it should be. And that was how the story ended, not with dramatic confrontation or perfect resolution, but with simple reality reasserting itself. My property, my rights, my fence. The way it had always been, and the way it would remain.